All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the That's Not Real Trek Watch Party podcast. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC. Directly below me and wearing the most fantastic shades you have ever seen in your entire life is the beautiful Short and Sweet. Hello, how are you doing?
Hello. Good. How are you?
I'm
Oh,
fantastic. And rabbit ears and everything from the
now
co-pilot.
I'm growing extra ears.
Yeah. We can document a little bit of this. You're on the road in the great wide open, heading back home, and so we're gonna attempt to do the podcast here while you're on the road, which is fine, and we'll do our best to make sure that stays good. And if not, we'll maybe delay or try something else. It is Thursday, September 1st, 2022. And for our 10th episode of That's Not Real Trek, we're looking at Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 3, which is Point of Light, and Episode 4, an oboe for either it's Sharon or Karen, spelled Charon. And I believe that's a little bit of a reference to the Imperial warship that they had in season one from the Terran universe. I believe that was also called the Karen, not an actual like ch sound like you would expect. So I don't know if that's related to that or not. I can't remember from my watch through of this previously, but that could be that. All right, so without further ado, we're going to get started here with episode 3, Point of Light. Here we go.
Okay.
There you go.
We're on freaking Bob's Road in the middle of Codeonville, Ohio.
Yeah. It got kind of rough there at the end, but
No problem. No problem.
Might be a little rough.
All right. So yeah, if you have any problems doing that, just let me know and we'll either take a break or start over or whatever.
okay.
All right. So quite a few things that happened in that episode. We had like three different storylines going on at the same time. Um, and those three storylines were, first of all, we continued the story with Laurel and Tyler slash Voke, who are trying to maintain the power in the Klingon Empire. And we find out that Laurel had a son by Voke before all of this happened with the Tyler transformation. And we saw that one of the other houses, the guy that was wanting to get control for himself, kidnapped her son basically, and was holding him ransom to get the Empire and the Chancellorship for himself. And they fought valiantly, but they were saved by Georgiou, who is now apparently working for an unspecified part of Starfleet security. Um, so first of all, to cap that off, we got a look at a brand new starship that apparently has nacelles that can fold out from under it or from its body, with a new captain that we haven't seen before. And I can tell you right now, his name is Captain Leland. And Georgiou, who is apparently working for this captain, and they are somehow connected with or a part of Section 31. All that was described in the last part. So, um, first of all, what does any of that remind you of anything, or anything come to mind regarding the Section 31 part of it?
No, I mean, I don't know too much about the Section 31 stuff. I know just that it kind of exists out there. Anything that has been detailed about it I have not been exposed to, so it's all kind of new for me. I thought that the tech that she came in with was really cool. Her cool weapons. She's got the, I don't know, the gel bubble thing that just kind of stopped everybody in their tracks. So that was neat. But yeah, it's all kind of new. It's nice to see them like kind of filling that out. So
Well, and yeah, at least from my perspective, knowing that Section 31 is playing a big role in this story arc, that is a big part of it. The fact that Georgiou comes in with all this newfangled tech that we haven't seen before, and certainly isn't something that like normal Starfleet officers, such as on Discovery, are have access to. So definitely we can draw from that. I think that Section 31, no matter what their role is, they definitely are kind of like maybe black government ops, covert operations, things like this, where they have access to technology that isn't nearly as readily accessible. And at the end there, the captain that we met, Captain Leland, he also mentioned something named control, which we have not heard before, and that definitely is going to play a relevant part. Um, so as for that, it seems like that at least wrapped up the storyline of what happened to Georgiou when she was no longer captain or acting captain of Discovery and kind of left on her own from the Klingon homeworld. And it turns out that she went to become a quote unquote security consultant for Section 31. Then we also have Tilly going absolutely batshit crazy. She's seeing someone from her past who is dead named May, and this drives her so crazy that she is now dropping out of the command program because she can't take it anymore. And we find out that this May has an agenda of her own, and maybe part of that is revealed in the fact that um, she refers to the captain as somebody other than Captain Pike, and we find out a little bit later that that's Stamets, this whiter than white, blonde haired captain. And that's when they tend to find out that there's a connection between the dark matter asteroid and the spores and a whole bunch of other, and she apparently has some kind of infection. And this parasite is then extracted from her body and they contain it. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on May's character and what that's supposed to mean to the overall story, why she's there.
So I originally thought that maybe she was like kind of some kind of like psychological breakdown where the aggressive, intensive side of herself that she had to draw out when they were in the parallel universe, maybe like that something was going on with that. I do really like the actress, so I have a feeling, I don't know, I'm guessing she's not going to be sticking around now that they've figured out what's going on. I really kind of was thinking in that direction, and now then they gave the flashback, and it's like, oh, it all makes sense, like that little green blob that just touched her shoulders, causing all this. So, yeah.
Which, if you didn't like think anything beyond that, you would think that was just like one of the spores landing on her shoulder, and that's it. There's nothing more to that. So it was kind of interesting how they developed that into its own side storyline. Now we are going to see May again. She's going to play a little bit of a role because if you were listening to what specifically May was saying to her, she's got this plan, she's got this thing where she needs Tilly's help, and Tilly's the only one that can do this. And so it seems like May, whatever type of organism that she is, and just presenting herself to Tilly as this person that she used to know, is trying to execute some kind of agenda, and needs Tilly's help to do whatever it is that she's trying to do. So we will revisit that, because at the very least we need to know what happens to disposition this organism that they now have in containment in engineering.
Sure.
And one more thing that stuck out to me that I think is going to be relevant is her saying that the place that Stamets flies, Captain Stamets, so to speak, is in the reaction chamber, where he interacts with the spore drive to actually navigate the ship. So just keep that in mind as we move. And then the third storyline is the love triangle of unbelievable bullshit between Spock and Burnham and Amanda and Captain Pike and all of this. Spock appeared to go crazy. He committed himself to a psychiatric institution because he thought he was going crazy. Then all of a sudden he escapes, supposedly kills 3 doctors and a nurse on the way out, and now he's the most wanted man in the Federation, and apparently he has seen these signals before anybody else has known anything about them. Well, then it was revealed to us that Amanda said that Spock apparently saw the Red Angel as a child, and that had something to do with the big blowout between Burnham and Spock and why they don't talk to each other now. So we definitely have some questions that need to be answered in regards to that, the relationship between Burnham and Spock, what's going on there. But what I would like to hear from you is your take on Amanda's role in all of this. She came to Burnham with stolen medical files that were encrypted, and then they get the captain's permission to break the encryption to find out what the hell is really going on with Spock. And she brings this to Burnham because she doesn't know where else to turn. She certainly can't get this help from Sarek. So what were your thoughts on how that all developed and what that's supposed to mean for the future of the story?
So initially I was kind of thinking like, oh, this is where Michael gets her like, F the rules, I'm gonna do what I want, because Amanda's just going in there and stealing files. And then they're trying to explain this distance between the two of them, and it's kind of not entirely believable, but like, if you suspend some belief, you can go with it, I guess. And then then she gets almost pissed at her when she finds out that like that Michael caused the rift between Spock and her, and she just kind of like storms out. So it's kind of jarring, because that's not really what you expect of Amanda, based on Amanda in other Star Trek theories and things like that. So I don't know. I kind of don't know what direction they're gonna go with it, with Amanda.
From what I've seen, it almost appears like they're trying to give Amanda this very serene, peaceful quality to how she acts, maybe because she spends so much time among and with Vulcans, and that it maybe has rubbed off onto her, and that at least in relation to humans, she's far more calm and not prone to emotional outbursts as a normal human would be. But she also is constantly putting her compassion on display by sympathizing and speaking emotionally in quiet terms and privately with Burnham and with Sarek and these other instances where you have seen her. And it almost seems like she's taken aback by this revelation from Burnham, that Burnham thinks it's something that she said to him or did to him. back when
Yeah.
they were still children. So almost like Amanda didn't expect that Burnham was going to be maybe the cause of all of this, or at least involved with it. Why did Spock see the Red Angel as a child? We have no idea, but maybe she's seeing Burnham as a little bit of an enemy if she's somehow involved with that, and it's negatively impacting Spock now. Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
So yeah, I just find that whole thing interesting that Amanda is now the forerunner almost, or at least she was up until this point, in trying to figure out what the hell has happened to Spock and why he's gone missing and why he was committed in the first place and what his connection to the Red Angel and the 7 points of light is. So lots of questions that it raises, and I can tell you they will be answered, but maybe not in a fast timeline, that we would hope, especially seeing as we're only in episode 3 of season 2 and we got quite a bit of ground to cover. So
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on that before we move on?
Oh, it was driving me crazy because Michael, she just had this like whispery, breathy, like almost all of her dialogue, and I was like, am I just now noticing this, or is it just this episode? And I think it's just this episode where she's just got this, like, I don't know, this inflection and this way of speaking that was just kind of dragging. I was like, why are they whispering? They're by themselves in a room. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell. In my opinion, at least as far as that goes, I don't think Sonequa Martin Green is that good of an actor, and that causes a few issues with the way she's trying to portray emotions. Or maybe she's, trying to put this human raised by Vulcan spin on it and is not actually pulling it off as well as she thinks, or who knows. There's also a running gag the further you get into the series that anytime something dramatic happens, Burnham cries. And it's like, okay, great job, Burnham. Stop crying. Let's do something now.
Right. I thought you were raised with Vulcans.
Right. Yeah. Or how in touch are you getting with your feelings? So we'll see. But all right. Let's go ahead then, and we'll start episode 4. That is an oboe for Karen or Sharon or Sharon or something along those lines. Right. You look like you're home now.
I am home now.
There you go. Good.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was a smooth travel for you.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
It was 6.5 hour
Oh.
there and back.
Long trip. All right. Well, we won't keep you too long. So quick recap. We basically were picking up on Spock's trail. He's in the stolen shuttle. We're going to go find him. But first, we are confronted, or Discovery is confronted by this sphere that is 100,000 years old, has an immense amount of data and everything else, and Saru determines that it is dying and just wants to transfer its information to them before it dies. So that is all accomplished, and now at the end we saw they're starting to put through what is now going to be referred to as the sphere data, which is all of this information that is very much likened to the Dead Sea Scrolls, and how that is basically just all of this historical information that we never had before as a human species that the sphere has now shared with us. So that's going to be a little bit important, kind of important moving on, but that all kind of came second to the first storyline, where we find out a lot more about Saru and the Kelpian species and what they go through. And primarily the point being that they are on a planet. Their home planet is shared with a dominant humanoid species called the Ba'ul. And what happens at the end of a Kelpian life is they either are culled or killed by the Ba'ul, or they are driven insane by this process Vihara. So he's thinking that because of the empathy that his species has and being in contact with the sphere, that this has caused Saru to go into Vihari prematurely, and now he's going to die. So the primary thing was we were dealing with the potential problem of Saru dying. And Burnham, who sheds a lot of tears, apparently, is now dealing with that. So, what were your thoughts on that whole introduction to what Saru apparently and his species has to go through and how he was approaching that?
Well, I like that they're fleshing it out. It almost kind of seems like now, he did mention Georgiou told him he couldn't go back there because of General Order 1. But it almost seems like now he might kind of buck that and just do what he wants because he's fearless now. He's got a new superpower. So that'll be cool to see. And then it was just kind of strange how I did like they did this. Everybody stood up for him as he left the bridge, but then they kind of sugar coated over, like, oh well, he didn't actually die. Like, they didn't talk about it at all at the end of the episode there. So
Right.
I mean, I'm sure it's understood that he made it through, but it would have been nice to see them acknowledge that in some way.
Right.
Maybe in the next episode they'll pick it back up.
Well, and I can tell you next week when we're looking at the future episodes here, this is definitely going to be addressed. All of that, that he is potentially going to go back to his home planet to confront this lie that apparently you can survive as a Kelpian beyond Vihari, and what that is supposed to mean to his species if they've been living with this lie all this time. What does that mean to their entire society? And so we are gonna get much more into that. It seems to me that the way they approached it was that this is such a shock and surprise to Saru that he doesn't know how to handle it yet. And all he can do is maybe articulate a little bit how it feels that fear has driven him his entire life because of how his society has been created. And he left that society, but it still, was the way that he operated. And now all of a sudden that's just gone. And he has to operate now with a completely different set of variables, such as not having fear, having courage instead, and knowing his own strength as a being and what that might mean to how he operates in the future. So he's obviously undergoing this very dramatic character shift, and we don't know what it's going to mean to his future and how he deals with things. The second thing is this ongoing thing with May, this biological or weird organism that is attaching itself to Tilly, and I gotta say, I found it almost surreal the way that they're singing the song and he drills a hole in her head so they can talk to May. And yeah, so what did you think about that whole scenario?
Yeah, I think the song thing was like, I know it was like trying to distract her.
Right.
It was a little corny, but like, I mean, it was a nice nod to David Bowie for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. It was almost like, oh, she's loose. Oh, now it's got her again. Now she's loose. Now it's got her again. Now
Right.
now. So I don't know if they're maybe drawing it out a little too much.
I
But then
agree.
I thought it was a nice comic relief when they're all like tripping on the
Right.
spores at the end there. So
and
To that end, it was okay, I guess.
and and then a subset of that, which was the comic relief between this Stamets versus Reno type deal. Where she's old school mechanic and he's new school fangled mushrooms and all this other stuff,
Mhm.
and her, especially her witticism that is, uh, built into the Janet Reno or Jet Reno character, where she's just, snarky as sharp as can be to everything he says. That sounded like a joke, except jokes are funny.
Yeah, I love her character. I
Yeah,
hope that they do a lot more with her.
yeah, it's absolutely great. Um, and yeah, it seemed like some comedy, or at least comic relief, was built into the fact that they were tripping on drugs and having to deal with that and figure things out. Now, this is the important part of both of those things, in my opinion, is that Star Trek is known for taking modern issues and building them into the storyline and discussing them in a way that not only is not controversial, but in a way that makes you think about some of modern issues that we face by looking at it a different way. And that's what one of the things I've absolutely always loved about Star Trek, even going way back to the original series and talking about racism and the Cold War and all of these things that we face as real human problems in our life now. We actually had two of those in this one episode. The first was the Reno versus Stamets argument of that essentially boiled down to, in our day, fossil fuels versus renewable resources,
Right.
and seeing how that conversation played out with her snark and
Mhm.
all of that. And the other was this Kelpian death ritual that essentially amounted to assisted suicide, which
Right.
is another thing that we struggle with in modern day.
Mhm.
So what did you garner from any of that, and how it was presented in this story?
Yeah, I think that the energy one was much more like kind of in your face. But I really thought it was cool that they found a way to work together and like overcome the problem they were facing, even though they are coming from two different sides of the spectrum there. Um, and then with this, I actually like didn't think about the Saru one until you just brought it up, and I was like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense because um you don't hear about it as much now. The physician assisted suicide. Um, I remember hearing a lot about it like my high school years, so like
Do-
late 2000s.
Dr.
Um,
Kevorkian,
Kevorkian,
and
yeah, and
I've
we
been
even
reading
did
up a
like
lot
a
on him.
yeah, we did a because I was in like mock Congress or whatever it was called. We did a that was one of our topics was the physician assisted suicide. So yeah, it kind of like didn't occur to me until you brought it up. But yeah, it's definitely um kind of right there in your face.
Right.
I just missed it.
And what I gotta, well, like you were saying, they kind of, Reno and Stamets kind of ended up working together, but more importantly, they started to see each other's side and what the
Mhm.
value of each other's side was, and how that then caused them to move from common ground to start working together,
Yeah.
and find real solutions. On the assisted suicide front, it's actually been on my mind in particular. Maybe that's why I saw that a little bit quicker, is because um, not only did I read some in depth stuff about Dr. Kevorkian and more recently, and
Mhm.
it's been on my mind as like something I wanted to maybe develop into a story that we do for the EBC channel, but um, the fact that that is maybe not as quiet as it seems, because there are many countries now that have been more recently looking at legislation to either enact like that, or like something similar is the legislation that they were talking about, giving terminal patients the right to try experimental drugs, knowing that this may or may not work, but what the hell, let's give it a try because I'm terminal anyway. You know,
Yeah, and they could, potentially find some kind of cure for
right?
something that.
Right. But I had read a couple of articles more recently about that, about how some people have gone to other countries where assisted suicide is now perfectly legal, and they feel maybe that I think Sweden is one of them, and how controversial that still is here in America. So kudos to Star Trek for taking some of our modern issues and building them into the storyline, and in such a way maybe that you didn't even notice that that's what that was referring to.
Yeah,
So I hope we see more of that. That to me is one of the core essences of Star Trek and great Star Trek writing. So
absolutely.
all right. Anything else before we wrap up for the night?
I think, yeah. I like that they kind of it's like a almost, they've got the storyline overarching with the spore drive and all this, but then we're kind of like venturing into this other territory, so it's just kind of cool that it's like the monster of the week
Yeah.
episode, but we're talking about social issues and
Yeah, and
yeah.
and we're not going to see, now that the sphere has been destroyed, it's not really going to come into play in the future. The data is that they have now collected and is only on Discovery. But I can say that we have to keep in mind that according to Star Trek history, now I forgot about that. We saw a little bit when Captain Pike is speaking to number one at the beginning of the episode. She was explaining that almost all of the problems that were occurring just on the Enterprise were because of the holographic imaging system. So he basically said, tear it out. We're not going to use that. We're just going to use good old fashioned view screens now on. And that could address some of what uh, is maybe some of these people's problems with the modern Star Trek, of that how are they using holographic screens when clearly that didn't happen in the original series. Well, maybe that explains some of that, and maybe they're going to clear that up even a little bit more.
Yeah.
At least with the original series, we know that they're not using holographic screens because potentially of this being something that Captain Pike now in his voyage with the Enterprise that's to come after this fact, that that's his decision, and they just don't deal with that on the ship. And then maybe Captain Kirk continued that. Um, and it might also have something to do with the Enterprise design. But we also know that there is apparently no mention anywhere else in Star Trek history of a giant 100,000-year-old sphere dumping its Dead Sea Scrolls in the Discovery computer, spore drive, or anything else like that matter. None of that occurred. So what we're looking for is some kind of specific attempt to make this fit the canon. That by the time we get to Kirk's Enterprise, the spore drive is no thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, is this maybe a problem that Stamets basically is looking into now? What is the problem with the spore drive that might be causing this now? He's dealing with this. I think she called the Jahai or something like that, whatever her species was, May, and they live in the mycelial network. So, what is going to happen to that so that we can have a nice, neat, wrapped up package where the spore drive doesn't exist in 5 years?
Yeah, it's kind of cool because it's almost like, so the criticism that the audience is giving about the show and about the technology issues is, it's being written into the show.
Yeah,
So I that's kind of cool. Like
right. And that's why anybody that says this is not real Trek doesn't know their asshole from a manhole cover. So,
exactly.
all right. So next week we're actually going to look at 3 episodes, our 2 regular episodes: Discovery Season 2, Episode 5, Saints of Imperfection, and then Episode 6, The Sound of Thunder. But before The Sound of Thunder, we're going to look at one of the short treks that deals directly with Saru, and it takes place 27 years before what we're viewing now. his leaving of Kaminar, his home planet, and how
Oh,
that
cool.
occurred. So we then have the information we need moving into him potentially going to his home planet to address this plot.
Nice.
So, all right, we'll pick it up then again next week. See you later.
All right, sounds
Adios.
good.